Okay, just a quick little video on the Windows registry and why it's there and how do operating systems keep track of all the different little settings that we have. So let's share my screen here. Take a look at this is what we're looking at, the Windows registry. So you're aware of what's going on. Think about it for a minute. If I actually take this window and I shrink it down to that big, and then I close down that window. Actually, I've got quite a few windows of Opera open, so I'd have to change quite a few windows. But once I do that and I close it down, if I open Opera again, boom, it comes back to the way I had it. Every single time you start your operating system, and I don't think let me hit this corner. I've got this little desktop background here, and it comes up with that desktop background every time I log in. It actually, I've got some different things running here at the top. Every time I log in, that stuff pulls up. How does it know? How does it keep track of that? How does that happen? Well, in Linux and Unix, so on Mac OS and in different variations of Linux, there's actually these little tiny text files. Now, some of you may have experience with those text files because you might play a game and it's like, oh yeah, go change this value in this text file and it'll fix this problem or let you do this, that, or the other. So every time you launch that game, it goes and looks in this little text file and goes, okay, and then starts it, right? So those are called config files or configuration files. And basically that happens over and over again on Linux and Unix. I remember the first, I've used Windows forever, and on my first Mac that I had at home, I had switched. The main reason why is because it really could do video and photo editing like butter compared to Windows machine at the time. And so I'd switched to it, and I had this little problem. I would come down and try to open up this calendar, and it would go boom, boom. Like, how do I fix this? So I tried to use my Windows troubleshooting technologies on it, and I could not get it fixed. Finally, I went to the internet, and back then the internet was not as helpful as it is now, but I did find something that said, oh, go delete this little file. And it was called plist.calendar something. And that's what they called most of them on Mac OS is a plist. And they go delete it. And I'm like, go delete it? Deleting things is dangerous. So I went and deleted it, and boom, I clicked it and it started up. It took me like 10 seconds to fix. And I was like, oh my heavens, I have wasted hours trying to fix this when all I had to do was delete this plist. So, looking at it a little longer, basically what it was doing is there was a little text file, and every time you would load calendar, it would say, pull up this way and pull up on this page and pull up, different things. And if you deleted that little text file, then what would happen is it would just create a new one, a new default, and then you would change it how you needed. That's how Mac OS deals with different settings. Again, that's how Linux deals with different settings. It used to be how Windows dealt with different settings. A long time ago, though, they basically said, we're getting problems. And really the reason that Microsoft was getting problems is because they were dealing with programmers that were not obeying the rules. And you'd end up with all these little text files telling the program what to do and what not to do. And you're like, let's just throw it into a big database. Let's throw it all into one of these databases. And then when they set up the program using their development software, it'll create the right keys or the right information for that. And so the registry is where all that's kept. Now, that sounds like a great idea, but the registry is often the biggest problem that we have in Windows. If you're the type of person that installs things because you want to, then your registry gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Programmers don't do what they ought to do. There's a laziness or an arrogance to what they should do. So you download this little program, and then you run it, install it, and then you run it, and you're like, it's okay. And a few days later, you uninstall it. It'll leave these little keys in the registry. It'll leave settings in the registry. And the bigger the registry is, the more or the slower your computer is because it has to load the entire registry, figure out what to do before Windows actually appears on the screen. So the bigger this gets, the slower that process is. And of course, it can get so bad that it actually just, destroys your computer and you end up having to do something else with it. This is the registry editor. There is no save, there is no undo in this. You don't play with the registry unless you need to fix something. You will see instructions for different viruses and malware that'll say, go to the registry and delete these keys. And so once you do that, then everything works. So this is a serious, serious thing. Most of the time we can't understand what it's doing, but you could take, a whole class on that, or go through a website for a few months, and then you would know, exactly what's happening. Some of this is easy, right? This is saying this is off of whatever the system root is, which would be C drive, and then go and look in cursors and look for this arrow and to do whatever cursor. That's what that is, and that's under the cursors in control panel. And so that's going to pull it up and say, hey, these are the cursors you have the ability to see. So if you wanted to add to the cursors, you could dump them into this directory and it would see those as long as they're the right file type. So anyway, it's broken down like this. I'm actually going to have a little video that shows getting around in it. This is something we do in the operating systems class as well. And it's a hugely important concepts to get, that when you install something, it creates these little settings and then doesn't delete them. So most people, if they just have a computer and they've installed what they wanted and then they never mess with it again, it'll run for years and years without any problems. People that install and uninstall, install and uninstall, install and uninstall, they start to run into issues because it's all coming back to this registry. So just remember settings. How big is a window? What is my desktop background? All that stuff gets put into here. And then, of course, any program and the settings it needs, any game and the settings it needs, it gets put in here. It's broken down into these different keys. This class is root. I will show you, basically, I'll show you in my little demo of what those are. A huge thing that gets backed up is the registry. So before something gets installed now, the registry gets backed up by Microsoft. So in case that program messes up the registry, you can roll it back.